everyone, my name is Yakshipriya and in today's video I'm going to be creating this illustration of some luggage. These are vintage bags that I wanted to create this illustration of. Now the reference photo that I did use for this had more of brighter colors on the bags, and they were not, they had a lot of color, red and blue and white and brown as well, and I wanted it to be more vintage looking, so I created this altering some of them just to look more vintage, and the colors as well. I wanted the color scheme for this piece to be more of a brown or variation of browns, so I used variations from reddish browns to regular brown and then burnt sienna for the differences of the browns for these three bags. Now the two bags, the one at the top and the bottom are bags, but the one that I'm drawing now is a trunk actually. So I really wanted to add a lot of line work for the, or details for the locks, the latches, the details on the bags. The bags have got these little metal studs around them. They have these corners. The one especially at the bottom has got the corners to protect the bag. The trunk has got that as well, but more of a decoration on it. It makes it look more fancy with that. And then the bag at the top just has regular locks, and then they have the leather handles for the two bags, and then the handles also for the trunk. So I wanted to bring that all about and have those details really in there when I was doing this piece. So now I'm inking the entire drawing after drawing the drawing with the graphite pencil, and I really enjoyed with the small bag I'm doing now. I really enjoyed drawing in those little stitching for the bag stitching that it has on it. It was really fun drawing that in with the fine liner, and then I'm going in and adding the details for the trunk. Now this piece was a very fun piece to work on because it's got so much of detail, yet it's only a simple drawing of three luggage bags, and there was nothing really, there's nothing else going on. It's only three bags, and just I wanted to create an interesting composition with them stacked one on top of the other, and then also having the different variations of browns for the different colors, but keeping it as well vintage. So that was something that I was really excited to try to bring out in this piece. And then now I'm just going in and adding those little corners with the studs as well that are on it, and then once it's done, I'm going to go in with some watercolor. So just a tip, just to remind you, if you work with watercolors and you're working over fine liners, try working with a fine liner on a separate piece of paper, scrap piece of paper, and then go over with watercolors just to see if the fine liner that you're using is not going to smudge, because sometimes fine liners do smudge when you go over with watercolors. So just double check that before you do your final piece. So once I was done with the inking and I let it dry, I erased the entire graphite drawing from underneath. I went in with watercolors. Now the bag at the bottom, or what I'm working on, is I've put down a layer of water, just to brush with clean water. I went over the entire bag, and then I went in with the brown. That ensures that I have this a smooth blend of colors as I'm adding the watercolor. So if you want to have smooth blends, try to keep the watercolor or keep the page wet when you're adding the watercolor, so it got this wet in wet look, as well as it gives you more smoother blends. If there is a bit of this unevenness with the color, I'm not too worried about it, because the type of drawing I'm doing is this vintage bags. They have some areas of the bag is going to be more worn out than other areas, so some places will have this sort of a splotchy color going on there, so I'm not too worried about that. Also, I'm trying to remember when you're doing any composition to keep your light source in mind. So for this illustration, I kept my light source coming from the, if I'm looking at the picture, it's coming from the left, and then obviously the shadow areas will fall on the right hand side. So you'll see the right side of the bags, the side of the bags are all going to be in shadow, so they're going to be a much darker color or darker value of the color that I'm using for the front. So the front will be much more vibrant and saturated than the side. The side will be saturated, but it will be darker because it's in shadow. So always bear in mind to think of your light source, because that's very important when you're doing any illustration or drawing or painting. Your light source is very important, because that will determine where your shadows go and where your brightest highlights are going to be. So always bear that in mind. So as you can see with the bag at the bottom, I went in with a reddish brown tone, and then I used the yellow ochre just for the little lock and latches that lock the bag, and I used a darker brown for the handle and the corners of the bag. And then with the trunk that's up on top of it, I'm using a brown tone for the entire trunk, and then I'm going really dark for those little bands that are running across the bag, as well as for the corners of the bag, and then I'm just doing that band that's running around the trunk from the front to the side. So that you can see I've done with the trunk, and I've also added that yellow ochre for the lock and the latch, and I've added some darker brown for the handle. Now with the bag on the top, I wanted it to be a different brown, so I used some burnt sienna. So I kept the burnt sienna more darker on the right hand side, because obviously that side is where the shadow area is going to be, but I also brought in some more saturation for the color in the front, so that you can see that that bag is very a bright rich color. And then I used some darker brown just for the handle for that bag, and then I just let the entire, or I dry the entire piece with a hairdryer. You can let it dry on its own, or you can speed up the drying time with a hairdryer. I prefer to speed up the drying time so that I don't have to wait, and I can continue with the piece. And then also I'm using some white mixed with grey just for those latches and locks for the bag on the top. And then now I'm going in with some metallic paint just to really define those little studs that are on the bag, as well as the locks and the latches for the bag. So I'm using some gold tones for the bag at the bottom, and I'm using a bit more of sort of it's a more softer gold color I'm using for the bag in the middle, or for the trunk in the middle, and then on top I'm going to use silver for the bag right at the top. So that's just to add. You don't have to use metallics, but I just have been enjoying using metallics in my illustrations, because when you look at the image in bright light, you see those metallics, and the metallics have a sort of a shimmer to them. So it gives this nice subtle shine to it, which I really like, because it's not a solid shine, it's a shimmer. So yeah, I really enjoy working with the metallics for this piece. And now I'm just going with a fine liner and really defining those line work, because the metallics are a bit more opaque, so it is covering up some of that line work. So I just want to refine those line work as well. So there we have our completed drawing. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, don't forget to like and share. Feel free to comment below, and don't forget to subscribe. Till the next one, bye.